Eric Clapton is without question a guitar god. He's played with the best of the best, bent notes into emotion, and carved his name into rock history. But here's the real question. What does it take to impress him? A man who's done the unimaginable with 6 strings? Who's seen and played it all? Surprisingly, Clapton isn't arrogant about his throne. If anything, greatness has made him more humble and more attuned to the brilliance of others. At 80, he's pulling back the curtain and revealing the guitarists who made him stop and listen. The ones who stirred his soul, challenged his craft, and reminded him why he fell in love with the guitar in the first place. Some names might catch you off guard. Others will hit you right in the gut. These are Eric Clapton's favorite players, and every one of them earned their spot. Duane Allman. Eric Clapton has played with legends, influenced generations, and earned the title of a guitar god. But even gods have heroes. Now at 80, Clapton is reflecting on the players who shaped his style, tested his limits, and reminded him why he picked up the guitar in the first place. Some names were expected, others total curveballs. But one name stood out, not just because of his brilliance, but because of what they created together: Duane Allman. His collaboration with Clapton would lead to one of the greatest guitar records of all time. Long before Clapton's solo career took off, he was already steeped in the world of supergroups. From the Yardbirds to Cream to Blind Faith, Clapton seemed to glide from one iconic lineup to the next. And beyond those headline projects, he was the go-to guy for whenever friends needed something special. Whether it was a fiery solo or a soulful riff, whether it was the Beatles or Delaney and Bonnie, he always showed up and left his mark. But for die-hard guitar fans, it was Derek and the Dominoes that felt like a fever dream turned real. A raw, no-frills band made for pure musical chemistry. Ironically, the Dominoes' origin story didn't start with Clapton's idea. It actually began during the creation of George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. With the Beatles era finally behind him, Harrison wanted to fill his debut solo album with only the best. That meant calling on talents like Bobby Whitlock, Carl Radle, and Jim Gordon. Clapton came in to play guitar, but what really happened was something bigger. The core of Derek and the Dominoes quietly formed right there in those sessions. Behind the scenes, though, Clapton was emotionally unraveling. His secret love for Harrison's wife, Pattie Boyd, was spiraling into obsession. It was the kind of passion that burnt silently but deeply, and that pain became the creative engine for much of the music he was about to write. When the Dominoes finally hit the studio, he arrived not with ego, but with heartbreak. He brought gritty blues covers and aching originals like Bell Bottom Blues and I Looked Away. These weren't just songs, they were emotional confessions, set to the soundtrack of unrequited love. But for Clapton to truly front this band, he needed something or someone to complete the sound. He could play the guitar with soul-splitting intensity, but he knew something was missing, and that something came in the form of a slide guitar, played by a man he'd never even heard of. Duane Allman, co-founder of the Allman Brothers Band, was already making waves in the American South. Yet Clapton's first exposure to him wasn't from a record or live show. It was through Duane's work on Wilson Pickett's scorching cover of the Beatles' Hey Jude. One listen, and Clapton was hooked. That tone, that fire, that soul. He didn't just hear it, he felt it. Still, it wasn't until Clapton saw Duane live with the Allman Brothers that the picture came into full focus. As studio engineer Carl Richardson later described, it turns out they were both afraid of each other. Duane was obviously in awe of Clapton, and Clapton, who'd been listening to Duane, was likewise in awe. So the two of them, when they finally met, looked at each other, and it was like, "Oh, I'm scared of you," and "Yeah, I'm scared of you too." Initially, Duane thought he was just stopping by to add a few licks. But once he laid down his first takes, especially on Tell the Truth, it was clear to Clapton that this wasn't just a guest spot. This was a partnership. "I was just going to play on 1 or 2, Duane later said, and then, as we kept on going, it kept developing. And Eric said, "Okay man, we're going to make ourselves a record here, and we're going to have 2 guitar players instead of 1. We worked our butts off on it. It's just good music all the way through. The result was Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, a masterpiece of blues rock, emotional turmoil, and twin guitar magic. Together, Clapton and Allman didn't compete. They communicated, weaving melodies around each other, pushing each other higher. But in certain moments, it's hard to deny that Duane outpaced even Clapton. It's almost as if Clapton chose to take a back seat, stepping into rhythm duty to let Duane's slide work soar. And he wasn't bitter about it. In fact, he was inspired. For someone so often labeled as God on guitar, Clapton found something divine in Duane's playing. It wasn't about speed or flash, it was about soul, tone, and truth. So when Clapton names Duane Allman among his all-time favorite guitarists, it's not just admiration, it's personal, it's musical history. And it's a reminder that even legends need someone to challenge them, move them, and help them create something greater than themselves. Muddy Waters. Before he ever became slow hand, before the sold-out arenas and guitar god status, Eric Clapton was just a kid in post-war England trying to coax sound out of a guitar that hurt his fingers. Clapton's journey began, as most legends do, in obscurity. At 13, he got his hands on his very first guitar, a steel-string German Hoyer. It was very cheap, Clapton admits, and most cheap guitars, as anyone will tell you, they hurt to play. It sounded decent, but it was torture on the fingers. After just 6 months of frustration, he gave up. The guitar went under the bed, and the dream with it, at least for a while. But fate had other plans. It wasn't a record store or a rock concert that pulled him back in. It was a children's radio show hosted by a man called Uncle Mac, Derek McCulloch. The show was full of sing-songy novelties like, "How much is that doggy in the window?" Not exactly blues central, but every now and then, like lightning in a bottle, Uncle Mac would sneak in a wild card. One day, that wild card was Whoopin' the Blues by Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. And just like that, Clapton's life changed. "I don't know what this guy was on," Clapton jokes, still puzzled about how the blues made it past the censors. But once it hit the airwaves, it hit Clapton like a freight train. "It got to me on a level that nothing else did," he says. "I got what they were trying to do. There was a seriousness about it, like classical or opera, that undercut everything else on the radio. It wasn't just music anymore, it was truth." From then on, Clapton dove headfirst into the blues. He searched for records, studied the greats, and taught himself by listening over and over again. Among his earliest guitar idols was Big Bill Broonzy, a technician with impeccable rhythm and feel. As Clapton listens to Broonzy's "Hey Hey" even now, he marvels at the man's groove, his rhythm. It's absolutely perfect. But it was Muddy Waters who carved the deepest groove into Clapton's soul. The raw grit, the tone, the honesty. It was everything Clapton wanted to be. When he first heard Honeybee, he didn't just enjoy it, he made it a personal mission. That bell-like guitar tone, that haunting resonance, Clapton set it as a milestone. "If I can get that, I'm one rung up the ladder," he recalls. "And I did, finally. And I thought, well, I think I can probably do this." That was the turning point, not just for his confidence, but for his identity as a player. Waters wasn't just a hero anymore. He was a blueprint. Years later, the student and the master would finally share a stage. By then, Clapton had cemented himself as one of the most influential guitarists in the world. But standing next to Muddy Waters, all that ego fell away. "He became the father figure I never really had," Clapton writes in his book. "They played together, they drank together, they lived the blues together, until Waters passed away in 1983. And yet, for all their closeness, Clapton says he never once asked Waters for technical advice. Not because he didn't want to, but because pride got in the way. "I wish I had," he says now, reflecting on the missed chance. But there was something else in the way too: addiction. "When I got to know Muddy, unfortunately, my drinking career was in full sway," Clapton says, with clear regret. Waters didn't discourage it, he liked to drink himself. But Clapton wasn't fully present during those crucial moments. Still, the impact of Muddy Waters was already imprinted on his fingers and soul. Along with Sonny Terry, Brownie McGhee, and Big Bill Broonzy, Waters shaped Clapton's entire foundation. And now, as Clapton looks back over a 40-year career that took him from the Yardbirds to Cream, to Derek and the Dominoes, and finally into solo legend territory, he's starting to open up about the players who truly shaped his journey. Some he discovered through children's radio, others in smoky clubs and dusty records, but every single one helped Clapton find his voice, because even guitar gods have heroes. Robert Johnson. When it comes to guitar heroes, Eric Clapton has played with the best of them and become one himself. But if you ask him who truly shook his soul to the core, you won't hear a flashy rock god's name. Instead, Clapton points to a long-departed bluesman whose ghost still lingers in every note he plays: Robert Johnson. In fact, Clapton once confessed that Johnson's best songs are practically untouchable. They've never been covered by anyone else, at least not very successfully, because how are you going to do them? Yet even with that reverence, Clapton dared to try. Me and Mr. Johnson, his tribute album, is a raw, heartfelt collection that dives deep into the haunting work of the Mississippi bluesman who died in 1938 at just 27. Clapton first heard Johnson's music as a teenager, and the effect was both jarring and magnetic. I was definitely overwhelmed, but I was also a bit repelled by the intensity, he told NPR. It was so much more powerful than anything else I had heard. For nearly 40 years, Johnson's spirit has followed Clapton, from his early blues years to global superstardom. With me and Mr. Johnson, Clapton finally put that admiration on record. It was about time I took my hat off to him, he said. And as we dig into the players Clapton admires most, it's no surprise Johnson still ranks at the top, a guitar ghost who never truly left his side. Jimi Hendrix. Eric Clapton doesn't casually name his favorite guitar players, but when he does, you can bet it comes from a place of reverence and lived experience. And if there's one name that still stands on top of Clapton's favorite guitarist, it's Jimi Hendrix. The friendship between Clapton and Hendrix was short-lived, yet emotionally charged, built on respect, and a kind of musical kinship that doesn't come around often. But while the two legends ended up bonding deeply, their first meeting wasn't exactly smooth. In fact, it was one of those rare, defining moments in rock history, where worlds collided and nothing was ever the same again. It began in late 1966, when the psychedelic chaos of America's counterculture came crashing into the heart of London. Jimi Hendrix, a little-known American guitarist, had just accepted an offer from the Animals' bassist, Chas Chandler, to try his luck in Britain. And Britain, for the most part, was not ready. Clapton, already a guitar god with Cream, stood atop the London music scene. He was the face of blues rock, respected, worshipped, unmatched. No one else even came close. But then came Hendrix, strutting off a plane with a confidence that rattled the very air. Even before Hendrix played a headlining show, the buzz was electric. Chandler wasted no time forming the Jimi Hendrix Experience and dragging his new prodigy around London. And then, it happened. The night that changed everything. On September 24, 1966, Chandler brought Hendrix to the London Polytechnic on Regent Street. Cream was playing that night. More importantly, it was the night Hendrix met Eric Clapton. Hendrix asked to jam. Clapton agreed, though with a gut feeling that something big was about to happen. And big it was. Halfway through Cream's set, Hendrix took the stage and exploded into a jaw-dropping version of Howlin' Wolf's Killing Floor. It wasn't just a performance, it was a takeover. He played with his teeth, behind his back, through pure fire and soul. The audience went silent. Clapton, visibly stunned, walked off stage. Later, Clapton recalled, he played just about every style you could think of, not in a flashy way. I mean, he did a few of his tricks, but it wasn't in an upstaging sense at all. He walked off, and my life was never the same again. For someone as competitive as Clapton, who was fiercely protective of his spot in the rock hierarchy, what came next was surprising. He welcomed Hendrix with open arms. Their friendship blossomed from there. Hendrix and Clapton became close, two guitar giants with different styles but a shared language. Hendrix's experimental cosmic blues met Clapton's soulful methodical phrasing, and they connected on a level few musicians ever reach. But just as quickly as it began, the friendship was cut short. On September 18, 1970, Jimi Hendrix died at just 27. The rock world mourned, but Clapton, who had planned to meet Hendrix that very night, was devastated in a way that lingered for decades. That night, Clapton had planned to meet Hendrix at the Lyceum to watch Sly and the Family Stone perform. In his hands, he carried a gift, a left-handed Stratocaster. I'd never seen one before. I was going to give it to him. That left-handed Stratocaster, meant as a simple act of friendship, became a symbol of unimaginable loss. I was left with it, Clapton said quietly. In the years that followed, Clapton couldn't bear to hear Hendrix's name brought up casually. People kept shoving him down my throat. Have you heard this one? This one's never been on record before. And I just thought, forget it, mate. It's been done. Looking back, it's hard to say what Hendrix might have become had he lived, but it's just as hard to measure the depth of his impact on fans, on music, and especially on Eric Clapton. Hendrix's arrival had dethroned Clapton in a way, yet Clapton never held that against him. Instead, he embraced him. He helped usher him into London's elite scene, lifted him up, and stepped back. That takes more than humility. It takes love. Their friendship, though brief, was deep and unshakable. Hendrix gave Clapton something rare, a kindred spirit who understood the blues as something more than music, something sacred, spiritual, even dangerous. And Clapton gave Hendrix a place to shine when he needed it most. Now, when Eric Clapton talks about the greatest guitar players, the ones who truly mattered, there's no doubt Hendrix is on the list, maybe even at the very top, not because he was flashy or famous, but because he played like no one else. Because, as Clapton once said, he was the one talking from his soul without compromising for anybody. So when Clapton reveals the guitarists who shaped him, don't be surprised to hear Hendrix's name spoken with quiet reverence. He wasn't just a fellow guitarist, he was a friend, a rival, and a once-in-a-lifetime force who rewrote what music could be. And for Clapton, the silence Hendrix left behind still speaks louder than any chord ever could. Prince. Eric Clapton has never worked a normal job. At 18, he joined the Yardbirds, and from that moment on, he's lived and breathed music. Over the last 6 decades, he's seen it all. Genres explode and vanish. Overnight sensations come and go. Through it all, Clapton has remained constant, a weathered but enduring figure in rock. So when he recognizes someone as a truly great guitarist, it's not casual praise. It means they shook him to his core. Clapton grew up on the blues. He's always honored the roots, especially his hero, Robert Johnson, whom he once called the most important blues musician who ever lived. But even with that reverence, Clapton has never been content with following the rules. He's always been drawn to innovators, guitarists who flip the script, shatter expectations, and refuse to fit the mold. That's why he's been singing the praises of artists like Mick G in recent years, calling him a guitarist who plays like nobody else. But decades earlier, Clapton had a similar reaction to another rule breaker, Prince. While the two never shared a stage or collaborated, Prince left a deep, unexpected mark on Clapton's life. After Prince died in 2016, an infamous quote went viral. Clapton, when asked what it felt like to be the greatest guitarist alive, supposedly replied, "I don't know. Ask Prince." It was a great line, but it wasn't true. Clapton never said those exact words. Still, the spirit behind them wasn't wrong. He deeply admired Prince, and not just his playing, but his presence, his vision, and his fire. In fact, Clapton once revealed on BBC Radio 4's Desert Island Discs that Prince's iconic song Purple Rain is his favorite track of all time. He didn't just love the song, he said it saved him. Clapton recalled sitting alone in a Canadian cinema, lost in the spiral of addiction, when he watched Purple Rain for the first time. At the time, he was drowning in alcohol and cocaine, and music had started to feel hollow. "I thought rock and roll was dead," he admitted. But then Prince appeared on the screen, equal parts Little Richard, Jimi Hendrix, and James Brown. Something clicked. "It was like a bolt of lightning," Clapton remembered. "I had no idea who he was. But in the middle of my depression and the dreadful state of the music culture at that time, it gave me hope. He was like a light in the darkness." Clapton left the theater shaken in the best way possible. Surrounded by beer cans in his hotel room, he picked up a guitar and wrote "Holy Mother," one of the most painfully honest songs of his career. He wasn't sober yet. He wasn't even sure he could be. But Prince had cracked something open in him. He had reminded Clapton of the power of music, not as an industry, but as a lifeline. "I'm so sad about the death of Prince," Clapton later wrote. "He was a true genius, and a huge inspiration for me in a very real way." For Clapton, Prince didn't just remind him what a guitar could do. He reminded him why he ever picked it up in the first place. And that's the thing about Clapton. He doesn't idolize guitarists just because they're fast or flashy. He's drawn to the ones who have something to say, the ones who twist sound into emotion, the ones who, like Prince, can walk into your life for 2 hours in a dark theater and leave your soul rearranged. He didn't know Prince personally. There were no long phone calls or backstage hangouts. Their connection lived in the music, but it was real, and for Clapton, unforgettable. Prince didn't pull Clapton out of addiction, but he did give him a moment of clarity, a brief flicker of purpose that reminded him who he really was beneath the chaos. That's why Clapton speaks of Purple Rain not just with admiration, but with gratitude. And that's also why, when Clapton names his favorite guitarists, the ones who truly touched him, it's not surprising that Prince's name is near the top. Because for Clapton, Prince wasn't just a performer. He was a lifeline, a quiet savior, proof that even in the darkest moments, music can still light a fire that refuses to go out. John Mayer. Eric Clapton knows what greatness looks like. For over 60 years, he's been the gold standard for guitarists, someone who not only helped shape modern blues rock, but also kept it alive across generations. So when Clapton calls someone a master, it carries weight. And in recent years, that rare praise has gone straight to one man, John Mayer. Clapton has been vocal about his respect for Mayer's playing, calling him extremely gifted and marveling at his natural talent. The pair worked together on the 2014 tribute album, The Breeze, an appreciation of J.J. Cale, a record Clapton curated to honor one of his greatest influences. Mayer contributed to 3 songs, Don't Wait, Lies, and Magnolia, but it was his performance on Magnolia that left Clapton stunned. During a promotional interview, Clapton was asked if he gave Mayer any direction for the track. His answer said it all. "No, I think I would have done exactly. You see, I had no idea that John even thought that much about J.J. Cale," Clapton explained. "He wasn't even initially going to be on Magnolia, but by the time we got to New York to record him, that's what we had in play." What happened next blew Clapton away. He cut all those tracks in about an hour, first or second take. "And I was gobsmacked, really," he said. "I mean, I respect John because he's extremely gifted. His facility is phenomenal. He is a master, and I don't think he even knows how good he is. He nailed Magnolia. It's so sensitive." That word, sensitive, might not always be used to describe guitar playing, but for Clapton, it's the highest form of praise. It's a reminder that technique means nothing if you can't make people feel something. And that's where Mayer excels. Of course, the admiration goes both ways. Born in 1977, John Mayer discovered Clapton's music in the 80s, at a time when the British legend had already been in the game for decades. But Mayer didn't just listen to the hits. He dove deep. He studied every era, every shift, and every phase of Clapton's musical evolution. In an interview with Guitar World, Mayer singled out one Clapton album as his favorite, Journeyman, 1989. That record, home to songs like Pretending, Bad Love, and Running on Faith, was the one that defined Clapton for a whole new generation. This is the whole genesis of Van Halen discussions. It all has to do with how old you were when it hit you. Mayer said, "When I was in high school, it was Pretending. It was Bad Love. It was Running on Faith." He added, "You can't expect someone who's 16 years old in 1990 to understand Cream. Not yet." So what finds you when you first pick up a guitar? It's that record. Journeyman has such a deep place in my heart. What Mayer admires most about Clapton isn't just the legacy, it's how Clapton communicates. In a 2004 interview for CMT Crossroads, Mayer explained what truly sets Clapton apart. "The thing about Clapton that's important to remember as a guitar player, it's a necessity, is that Clapton is lyrical," Mayer said. "Doesn't mean he is singing. He is playing lyrics on a guitar. That's why housewives, people who don't even know how many strings are on a guitar, want to listen to Clapton play. Because Clapton plays in a way that hits people in the heart, not the head. He's a lyrical guy." That emotional clarity is what bonds these two players. Despite being from different generations and styles, they speak the same language, one made not of notes, but of feeling. Their collaborations haven't just been limited to studio recordings either. Clapton and Mayer have also shared the stage live, including powerful performances of Pretending, a full-circle moment for Mayer, who once idolized the song from the audience. So, when Eric Clapton speaks of his favorite guitarists, it's no surprise John Mayer makes the cut. Not because of his fame, not because of flashy solos, but because, like Clapton, Mayer plays the guitar the way it's meant to be played, with soul, honesty, and fire. Albert Lee. Eric Clapton has never been the flashiest, the trendiest, or the most unpredictable musician out there, and he's just fine with that. While his work with Cream rewrote the rules of rock, Clapton was never chasing the charts or trying to keep up with pop trends. His heart has always been rooted in one place, the blues. For Clapton, the blues wasn't just a style, it was a language. Long before he became slow hand, he was already captivated by the raw soul of legends like Muddy Waters and Robert Johnson. They didn't just play guitar, they spoke to something deep inside him. While the British invasion was burning bright and every young guitarist was out to show off how fast they could play, Clapton preferred to let his guitar feel something. But among all the musicians he admired, there was one guitarist Clapton always kept a special eye on: Albert Lee. Lee wasn't your typical bluesman. He leaned more into country and rockabilly, bringing a wild mix of twang, speed, and precision that somehow never overpowered the song itself. For Albert Lee, it was never about showboating, it was about taste. Whether he was sliding through a quiet ballad or hybrid, picking his way through a barn burner, Lee always played what the song needed, not just what his fingers could do. That quality, restraint mixed with brilliance, struck a chord with Clapton. Speaking to Louder, Clapton once revealed, "The only person I was really conscious of, and in a way, it was because he was really serious, was Albert Lee." Albert was playing with Chris Farlow, and Albert, to me, was a very interesting guy because he was a devotee and he still is of the Everly Brothers. That's pure Clapton. Never fawning over fame, but quietly admiring the players who stay true to their craft. While Clapton had been aware of Lee's work for years, it wasn't until his solo career took off that you could really hear the influence. Albums like Slow Hand began leaning into a rootsier, more Americana sound. Gone was the distorted woman tone from his Cream days. In its place was a cleaner, Stratocaster-driven groove, subtle, soulful, and unmistakably mature. Take Lay Down Sally, a song that could easily be mistaken for something Lee himself might have written. Clapton weaves through the groove with ease, not in a hurry to impress, but simply to feel the music. By the time Unplugged came around in the early 90s, Clapton had fully mastered that balance: bluesy, folksy, relaxed, and confident. He even turned old standards like Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out into stripped-back, heartfelt moments that felt more personal than performative. That's the thing about Clapton. As time went on, he traded his flash for feel. And that slow burn, that simmering maturity, that's something he saw in Albert Lee from the very start. Not every great guitarist makes you want to pick up a guitar. Some make you want to listen. Albert Lee was one of those players for Clapton. In a world obsessed with speed and the spotlight, Lee reminded him what it means to play with soul. Which guitarist is your favorite? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. And click the next video on your screen. You'll enjoy it.